This week, South Africa's largest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, sparked anger after putting up election posters deemed to be racially inflammatory. This was in Phoenix, a town still reeling from the killings of dozens of mostly black people during the July unrest. On Thursday, anti-apartheid icon Archbishop Desmond Tutu marked his 90th birthday. A portrait of him, which was recently defaced by racist graffiti, has been restored by the artist, who added a celebratory message. The legacy of racism in South Africa continues to haunt society, and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation is encouraging young people to reflect on the topic of racism through its 5th annual writing contest. We are joined in studio to discuss this, as well as reflect on the local government election campaigns. We are joined by the head of transformation at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Dr. Athinangamso Nkopo. Very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the essay competition. As we mentioned, you are in fully your 5th year, and this is not the first time that young people have to write about racism. I'd like for us to reflect on what young people have had to say about racism in the country over the years.
Yeah. This essay writing competition is one of a kind in terms of encouraging young people to engage with something which, you know, as you will see during these elections, is really difficult to deal with, and which they are probably always encouraged to, you know, get over, let go. But in the past, young people of all races have participated in this competition, and they have demonstrated that they have a very sophisticated understanding of how it is that racism works and the ways in which it has morphed since it was supposed to have gone away in 1994. And, you know, it has been a process which doesn't only nurture their abilities and their skills and empower them, it really just empowers them in terms of giving them voice to say, this is something that ought not be part of my society, but also this is something to which I am thinking about solutions. And it's an educational process for us as much as it is for them, and it has been received with a lot of enthusiasm by young people. It's a competition that empowers, enables, and allows young people to express themselves and feel that they have some say over their lives and over their society. And these are people between the ages of 15 and 21.
It's good to get them while they're still young, and probably we should start also with the younger ones before they get to 15. I'm curious, when you say they reflect on how racism has morphed over the years, what do they find? Well,
there are different postures to racism. It's not like it was under apartheid. Well, it sometimes is, as we are experiencing all the time. But the microaggressions that young people are experiencing as a result of the merging of races, the sharing of public spaces, are quite different because, you know, those perpetrators of racism don't have the support of a government system or of a society whose values are racism. And so the microaggressions about you're too loud, your hair is too, this is not a township, this is not a taxi rank, that demand for space to be recaptured by, you know, right-wingers or white supremacists, is shrouded under, you know, behave a particular way, a policing of norms and values, but it is itself a charge to make young people feel shame about their blackness, to make them feel shame about their circumstances, which are not of their own making, of course, but which result from a long system of racism that came prior to apartheid. But coming into the new South Africa, the rainbow nation of all races, those microaggressions are there and they're consistent. And they are felt and understood by young people as, you know, microaggressions with racist undertones that are designed to make them feel uncomfortable, designed to discriminate against them. And they're able to link these actions to their own values. And the thing that we've discovered quite consistently is that young people themselves are wedded to the ideas of non-racism. They want to exist in a society where everyone is treated fairly, where everyone is treated equally, and where your own race, which is not of your making, doesn't determine your trajectory and your future.
Fairness, treating people with equality. Please indulge me on this as I digress a little. These microaggressions that you talk about as a result of racism, what role do they play in the term that has now been dubbed Afrophobia, right? Because also in South Africa, we do find that sometimes there's an intolerance towards people who are not from this particular country.
Well, I think it's quite an intuitive response to be opposed or repellent of other groups when you understand yourself to be competing for space and resources that you are not privileged into accessing. So the issue of Afrophobia is an African problem, really, because it has reared its ugly head in many countries, in Cote d'Ivoire under the Ivoire era, in Nigeria at its peak of independence against Ghanaians and other West Africans, in Zimbabwe, when Zimbabwe was the breadbasket, and the attitudes that were held against West Africans. And now, because we're the latecomers to the democratic process and to the independence process, it is rearing its ugly head over here. But it is a symptom of the kind of nepotism, the kind of vagabond attitude which African governments have taken to ordinary citizens by either, privileging one tribal group or one national identity over another. And so people understand themselves to already be competing for resources that are privileged for another place. And black South Africans understand, and the statistics that we get every year exposed to us, that the infrastructure, the location of things, where money is, where safety is, where education is, where health is, still lies with the group which has, accumulated that wealth through looting and violence for over 500 years. And yes, we are an open and a democratic society, but they still continue to own most of the land. They continue to own every industry. They continue to, be able to barricade themselves against the lack, the poverty of South Africa. And so ordinary South Africans, I think are made to understand that they are scrummaging for these resources. And, now that we're all South Africans, we think we ought to be the only focus of resource distribution. But I think we still have a long way as a continent to understanding that foreign nationals, fellow Africans are not a threat, but possibly, part of a solution that could break the back of a white supremacist structure.
Absolutely. They're not a threat. Collaboration is quite important for us, especially on the continent. We're back with more with you in a moment, so please do stay with us. We continue with this discussion. Hello again, and thank you so much for staying with us. We continue our discussion with Dr. Athinangamso Nkopo, the head of transformation and anti-racism at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, as they have launched their essay writing competition, which is now in its 5th year. Let's get into that, right? So the youth essay competition, talk us through some of the topics and what young people should look forward to with that.
Well, the competition is open to young people between the ages 15 and 21. And this year, there are 3 topics under which they can engage the issue of racism. And the first is that a future without racism is possible. The second is schools should be laboratories of anti-racism. And the third is apartheid is over, racism is over, or is it? And these essays should be between 1,000 and 1,400 words. They may be written in any South African language. And in order to participate, young people just need to write the essay and send it to youth@ahmedkathrada.org, or reach out to us on our Facebook page, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, or Twitter, at Kathrada Foundation. And there are prizes this year. We will be giving prizes to the top 3 essays, and in first place we will be awarding 2,000 rands. In second place it will be 1,000 rands, and in third place it will be 500 rands. So we hope that's some incentive for young people. And the closing date for the competition is the 29th of October. So essays will be receiving, we have been receiving essays, and we'll be receiving them until the 29th of October.
That's a great initiative. That's some pocket money so they don't have to disturb the parents for December. As we discuss racism, especially for this essay writing competition, a big talking point in the country has been the election posters of the Democratic Alliance in Phoenix and Durban. I'd like for us to take a look, listen at this, and we'll discuss it in a moment.
Mixed views about it. Some saying that you can't call those vigilantes, allegedly, who killed people, heroes, as you are saying in those posters. Do you regret those posters?
That's not what the posters say at all. And quite frankly, the people are heroes. The people who are heroes in this are the South Africans who, when the government retreated and the SAPS retreated, stood up and defended the rule of law, defended the Constitution, and defended their lives and livelihoods. Those are heroes. People who stood up against the lawlessness. And I will call them heroes, and I will continue to call them heroes, because they didn't retreat in the face of danger. They didn't hide away like the SAPS and Bekele's people when things got real. They stepped up and stepped to it. The President himself called them heroes in his own newsletter, and I concur fully with that. Anybody who stood up for the rule of law, for the Constitution, which are founding principles of our party, I will continue to call heroes.
DA leader John Steenhuisen, before his apology, standing by that decision that they have made, saying that they will not apologize. This has divided opinion in the country, right? So for young people who are doing their research for this essay, what would your word be? Not necessarily to them, I think maybe your reflections on this issue.
So I've been thinking about this for not too long, because it's clear to me. There is a group of young people in Soweto who call themselves heroes, who are going around and defending property and shopping malls and things like that. That poster in Soweto makes contextual sense. That poster right now, while many organizations in that community are working at redress and reuniting, put in Phoenix, strikes a particular chord. And the DA understands that. The DA is not, is just doing politics. You know, all those corny things that you hear during elections. No publicity is bad publicity. Don't let a crisis go to waste. The DA is doing that politics, but, not very sophisticated and not very, quite tone deaf, to be honest, because people have died. And putting up a poster that may be interpreted as those people who killed as vigilantes, not upholding the law, putting a poster up like that at such a time is incisive and divisive and tone deaf, very insensitive. And so I think, this messaging before the apology is quite contradictory, because the posters say the ANC calls you racist, we call you heroes. But the response is the president, who ostensibly must represent the ANC, himself called you heroes. They understood exactly what they're doing, and they needed the attention, I think.
I'm still in studio with Dr. Athinangamso Nkopo. She is the head of transformation and anti-racism at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. I'd like for us to focus on, what it is that we just saw now, but what we're going to be seeing throughout the rest of the month, right? So we have Umama here who seems quite pleased with her counselor bemoaning the late payment of her SASSA payout. Essentially, the local government elections, which are enshrined in the Constitution, the access of basic municipal service, it is a right for the people of South Africa, but not many enjoy that right. That we are sitting here 27 years after democracy tells us what?
That we don't just have a corrupt ANC problem, we have a corrupt system problem. And just looking at some of the footage from this morning and the areas in the northwest, in Mpumalanga, in Limpopo, without water, during a pandemic, wherein we're supposed to be washing our hands for 2 minutes, is baffling, because it means that not only do we not have roads, or we're struggling with housing or load shedding or all the kind of middle class problems which you will see at the fore of social media and possibly in the media at large, but that basic fundamental human rights, like water, are still out of reach for many, many South Africans. And that after we have seen these statistics of youth unemployment, we've seen these new statistics of poverty rising in the country, that local elections are going to have to ask for more than promises. They're going to, ordinary South Africans are asking for more than fixing potholes or fixing the things which the governing party has ruined or damaged, but to take care of our basic right to live, to have water, to have access to a home, and. It's really, really difficult, and I'm sure it must be very frustrating for all the people who are watching these photo ops of these parties. They must be so frustrated that this circus happens every 4 years and nothing ever changes, and so humiliated that they must have to ask, the president or their councillor for something as innate, as fundamental as water. So this is, election season is tough because all of the serious problems our communities face come to the surface, but also we also have to contend with the serious inaptitude of our structures of government, of our leadership, and of our oppositions as well.
You speak of leadership and structures of government, and as you outline some of these problems and issues of humiliation faced by people, it's something we can fix though, right? To their admission, these political parties, they have mentioned that we sometimes have people in positions of power that should not be there. Some of these councillors and local municipal managers don't even have, the right qualifications to be in those positions. You may not have the right qualification, but maybe you've got the heart, and that's something different. But in this case, what then do we do?
We have to look at the long durée of the process. Since 1994 to 2021, an ANC council in Bushbuckridge has not been able to sufficiently supply that community with water. And, there are often these tactics of blaming the victim. Well, these people don't have water because they tap illegally into the water system. These people don't have electricity because they tap illegally into the electricity system. But the point is that these things haven't been there for so long. People are still on possibly the longest list on earth waiting for houses that they were promised in 1996. And in the interim, they have had to live. They've had to get by, which is why, the immediate vilification of people looting, for example, is unkind and is out of touch, because these people have been waiting for basic services for however long we have been a democracy now, right? And what they see is that the ANC is not looking after their interests. If it is in fact the case that we don't have the right people in those positions, then it means we have not had the right people in those positions since 1994. And that ought to trouble our conscience. It means then that there is no political will to find the right people if it has taken this long, or the right people cannot function in those positions because the system itself has been corrupted by prioritizing individual wealth, individual conspicuous consumption over the very lives of South Africans.
You touched on the consequences of the lack of leadership, or on the lack of leadership. Driving past one of the highways in the country, I witnessed after it rained, there was a puddle, and there were 3 boys that were playing in that puddle, but they were swimming in that puddle. I remember the time when I was growing up in Soweto where you had Jake's swimming pool, Orlando, or you had somewhere to go. There was a community hall where you could go to entertain yourself or to keep yourself busy. Essentially, this is about services, but also occupying the minds of young people so that they defend their country and they don't burn their country. In the absence of leadership, what is it that you and I can then do?
This is the difficult part, because there don't seem to be very many ways that young people can opt out of a corrupt government, out of a corrupt system. And what happens in that process is incentives are created for young people to join that same system of corruption and of looting. And outside of a complete overhaul, outside of a consensus that we need something fresh, something anew. It doesn't seem that there is very much that we can do except to use our vote to attempt to change, to shift. But more than that, I think we have to encourage as South Africans, young people, to participate in the democratic process beyond the elections, to put pressure on these institutions. We work with young people in the south of Johannesburg, and there are community facilities which have been looted by ANC councillors. There is a library in Lahai which has been finished, has been completed, but won't be open, cannot be accessed by young people who direly need that space because the chain of command, the process, I don't know what the matter is because everything has been completed. And often, that infrastructure was there and it was vandalized, it was left to dilapidate, not taken care of. And in 2021, children in South Africa are playing in a puddle on the side of the road, something which is, unthinkable in the affluent areas of this country. But that divide speaks to just the fact of these two South Africas. There are people right now who are voting because they know that, their business interests will be taken care of by this group or another. And people who are boycotting voting because they have simply lost faith in the system and have no way of opting out, of changing their lives.
Yeah. Then in enters smaller political parties or independent candidates here. With what you've just said, is it time maybe we consider depoliticizing, local governance and service delivery?
Absolutely. My own opinion is that our experience of the New South Africa is enough evidence that that infrastructure for the country ought to be depoliticized, so that we are not in the position that we are in now. I can imagine Umama Lo a KZN has been voting for the ANC her entire life, and the ANC has the experience, has the capacity, if the political will is there, to transform our societies. And she may have experienced a glimpse of that. But the ANC has been failing that community and her for many, 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 many years. Thinking about the option of going to a smaller party, with people who come out of the ANC themselves, or with the DA, which shows no regard or care for black lives, must be a really difficult position to be in. And so you're stuck with the beast and in this kind of abusive relationship that we find ourselves in as South Africans, due to our history, our memory, our commitment to freedom fighting. And in the end, we find that we have nowhere to go and no one to listen outside of these election photo ops. And rioting, looting, like Martin Luther King said, is the language of the unheard. And South Africans are unheard and taken care of by a government which promised them, a better life for all. And
with the work that you do with young people, very quickly for us, I'd like to speak to some of those who feel unheard and untaken care of, especially those in less privileged communities, right? So where your only hope is just to wake up and wonder about there's no purpose of the day. You start drinking alcohol at 9 o'clock. These are scenes that we see, right? There's a tavern down the road and the music is blaring until 12 o'clock midnight. Somebody who's young and who says, well, Dr. Ati, should I even bother voting? Why should I?
Absolutely. I think there is value in voting for what it arms you with. And that's not necessarily that your vote is going to give you the results that you're looking for. But in the process of voting, young people and older people, everybody needs to do the kind of engagement and research that is necessary to understand, how does the council work? How does it function? What are its powers? What is beyond its power? How does the provincial government work? What are its powers in relation to the national government? And these manifestos which are being launched are an opportunity.
I'm so sorry, but I am getting an instruction from Yaku that we do have to wrap on this. We can't afford any more time on this, but thank you very much for your time. Dr. Athinangamso Nkopo is the Head of Transformation and Anti-Racism at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. A great pleasure being in conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.